Welcome to the Strength Coach Experience podcast. I'm your host, Joe Lego, and here we go. Welcome everyone to the Strength Coach Experience, episode 7. Today we are here with Ken Kontor. He is the CEO of Performance Inc. out of Lincoln, Nebraska. Ken, welcome to the show and thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks
Ken,
for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for being here. So why don't we get right into things here? Why don't we go over a little bit about your background and how you kind of got involved in the strength conditioning industry, and then we'll go from there.
Right. Basically, I started off powerlifting. I was a competitive powerlifter in the state of Nebraska, and I did that. Actually, I started in sports in Nebraska, playing high school football, wrestling, and shot put. And the shot put is where I got my interest in weightlifting because the track coach, even back then, believed in strength training. So it kind of turned me on to that. And then basically I got into powerlifting and competition based on the shot put. So I wanted to improve my shot put. So I threw in college. I went to the University of Nebraska and got my degree in journalism and in the advertising sequence. And one of the things that really sparked my interest in all of this was Joe Weider's All-American Athlete. I'm sure you've heard of Joe Weider, but anyway, he had this magazine that was devoted to the application of strength training to sport, which was really, really way ahead of its time. So it really it sparked my interest in combining weightlifting to sports. So I was at Nebraska. I got my degree, and during that time, I was involved with the Husker Power Strength Program. So I volunteered in the UNL weight room for the football team, and really learned an unbelievable amount of information as far as strength training is concerned at the University of Nebraska. And back when Nebraska was truly a power. So anyway, that's in competitive powerlifting. And so that's kind of how it all started in my career. So then in college, I went to grad school and took exercise, phys, kinesiology, tests and measurements, that type of thing to round out the scientific aspect of strength training and all of that. And I taught a PE class at the University of Nebraska on strength training. So anyway, so powerlifting is part of it. I also was an Olympic-style lifter. I competed in powerlifting, a 9-time state champion, deadlifted 630, and that's 9-time state Olympic lifting champion, 5-time powerlifting. So anyway, so I was really into it.
Did you work out at all, before you got into high school? Like, were you always active with weights and things? Or
no, not really. No.
So the powerlifting started when you got into high school?
Back then, if you lifted weights, you get muscle bound. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah, it makes you too big. Yeah, you can't lift.
No, that's right. I can't move. Scratch your nose. No, I'm lifting weights. My biceps too big. But high school turned me on because you play football, you play wrestling, and the shot put. Those are all weight training oriented activities.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and with, it's good to hear that, you did all that stuff back then because, before Joe Weider came out, everybody kind of thought, like you said, he was insane. I mean, if you watch the movies and stuff like that, everything was frowned upon, everything was crazy, they didn't want him taking pictures, he was all about no smoking. I mean, even a lot of the stuff or most of the stuff he talked about back then, it reigns supreme today.
Exactly.
No smoking,
Yep, and then there was also Bob Hoffman. And Strength and Health, and then Ironman Magazine with Perry Rader. He was from Nebraska and sponsored a lot of weightlifting meets, so I got to know him. And those three were very influential in the early ons of what happened with the NSCA, et cetera. In fact, when we were with the NSCA, we did a trip over to Japan to start the NSCA Japan with Joe Weider and Betty and his brother, and that was an experience. That's probably another podcast, but anyway, let's.
So
okay.
Let's get into that. So why don't we go from the transition from the powerlifting in college, and then transition how you got involved in the NSCA?
Basically, I was, I heard about the strength training, the NSCA starting back in 1978.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, listening, the NSCA is the National Strength and Conditioning Association.
Yes.
It is kind of the governing body for strength conditioning that we all have to get certified by.
CSCS. I was involved with the CSCS committee and all of that stuff. So please don't throw rocks. So anyway, so we start. I started as the assistant executive director and the editor of the newsletter. And I got something I got to show you here. I'm sure if anybody's seen this, I'll be amazed. This is the introductory issue of. It was called the National Strength Coaches Association. And this is the very first issue. It's only 4 pages. And it had we had 75 people in Lincoln, Nebraska. And we had a banquet. There's Bob Devaney giving the keynote address, sitting there and whatnot. But anyway, so that's what started. Started back in 1978. I was living in Omaha, so I commuted. We started the publication. And the philosophy behind the NSCA, the publication, was to put every nickel that we made into enhancing the newsletter. This first newsletter, real newsletter, volume 1, number 1, was 16 pages. So, and it's black and white, but we kept emphasizing education and information. So that's how the NSCA basically got started. I worked for 6 months without any salary, but I had other, with Boyd Epley and whatnot, we had another business on the side, so that was able to do some money making that way. And it really was a by the bootstraps start, because we did, and Harold Bathel at the University of Nebraska print department, he allowed us a lot of credit for the printing costs, because that printing and postage were the big things way back. So anyway,
was there any other organizations or anything like that before the NSCA? Was there a governing body, or were they really the first one to?
They're the first one. Yeah.
Education.
But as far as strength coaches are concerned, that's the first one. Let's see. Elvin Roy was probably the pioneer. He was a professional football strength coach, and he had a lot of influence on the formation of the profession. And of course, Boyd Epley had a lot to do with it too in the collegiate level. So, and how it expanded from there. And that was part of what the NSCA did, was just to promote and get more and more members, start a state association. So, we did a lot of different things as far as the advancement of strength and conditioning and the profession. And we changed the name from National Strength Coaches Association to National Strength and Conditioning Association about 5 years into the progress. It was like 81 or 82 that we changed the name to be more encompassing with the concept of conditioning, not just strength training, which was narrow, and and it goes back to the muscle bound thing, and try to avoid that as well.
So they were really the pioneers of adding conditioning and kind of combining everything, because before that you just had powerlifting and there was really no movement science and stuff like that.
And guys like John Garhammer did research on the power clean and how it improved vertical jump. I mean, and Mike Stone and Bill Kramer, I want to shout out to those, changing the name to strength and conditioning, and when advancing the research aspect of it with Bill Kramer and John Garhammer and Mike Stone and John Garhammer did a study on the vertical jump and the improvement of the power clean. And so basically, we were free weight oriented because machines had its limitations. Mike Stone did a lot of research on that, and then we had a conflict, of course, with Nautilus, which was one set to failure, Arthur Jones and that whole thing. And he gave a keynote address, our third national convention. I think it was in Dallas, and he said, "Anyone here that advocates the barbell should be criminally incarcerated." All this strict,
Yeah.
what did he say?
Yeah.
But that's what it was back then. I mean, a machine, Universal Gym, all those others. So it was quite interesting, of the concept of free weights. And again, I'm prejudiced towards free weights and not machines or that type of thing, because you got to develop muscle hypertrophy, and the NSCA focus in the beginning was football, American football. And so hypertrophy was huge, and muscle size, this type of thing. So anyway, it evolved. I was with the NSCA for 14 years and left and started performance conditioning, which I do now. It's sport-specific conditioning publications for baseball, softball, which you do a great job of contributing to. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
We
Appreciate
also performance conditioning, volleyball, and soccer. And we also do cycling, and we're associated with the national governing bodies, for example, with volleyball, the Coaching Association of Volleyball, and with the Coaching Association Soccer, et cetera, and the PBS CCS in baseball, which is the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society. There's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So, you always see names on the back of shirts and whatnot. You got to have a big back and big lats to be able to fit that name on the back of a shirt. So,
Yeah, I know it takes a lot of space. Why don't we go back a little bit? So when you were in college, what sort of stuff did you do? Did you use machines when you were at Nebraska, or did they allow you to use? It was all barbell stuff?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's, because if you're a power lifter and you're doing leg presses, that may be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, definitely all free weights. I got into Olympic lifting, and that was really quite that's one of the most difficult things to learn, is how to do the clean and the snatch properly. But it's great results as far as explosive development is concerned. So anyway.
How did you get involved in journalism? Were you always a writer early on, or is that something?
No, I guess I just was interested in it. I mean, it just seemed interesting, and and when you say journalism, that's a wide spectrum, because you have broadcast, and then you have the editorial aspect of it, and then you have advertising. And I always consider advertising a little bit of the BS side of the whole thing, and I'm sorry, you have to sell, okay? Yeah. So anyway,
exactly, it's all about selling.
That's right, exactly. So anyway, and I got interested in it, and went through, got the degree, but like I said, right after that, I was doing the powerlifting, et cetera, and I said, hey, I got to learn about exercise phys and whatnot, and all these other things. So taking those graduate courses, anatomy, et cetera, just was absolutely ideal. So you take the degree in journalism, the competitive weightlifting, and then the educational background, plus the experience at the University of Nebraska in their football weight room, just spotting and changing weights and this type of thing, and helping supervise. It was absolutely unbelievable back then.
Yeah, no, I mean, it goes back to what I talk about on the other ones. It's all about experience, and you're able to get experience on every level. In my last podcast, I talked to a coach, and she talked about the same thing. She started at JV, she played basketball, started at JV, went all the way through the ranks, and now she, went D1. Now she's Division II, and we were just talking about how important it is to, try to cover all those bases, whether it happens organically or whether you have to go out and kind of search. I think the best thing to do for anybody, especially in the field of strength conditioning or just anywhere, is, try to, go to your checkpoints, because the more experience you can get, the more, the more people you talk to, and the more kind of different percentages you get of things, you'll come up with a better ideology, as opposed to going to one school, staying there, and then that's it. Yeah. Or, what we see a lot of times, I think, more so with strength and conditioning a lot, but, we get PTs too. I know some people where they go through all this school, they kill themselves for 4 or 5 years, whatever, and then they get out and they've only been in this, kind of little box, if you will, and then they go to a regular place or a commercial place, and they hate it. And now you're,
Well, one of the biggest things early on with the NSCA was the establishment of a performance team, and to promote that kind concept. So what is the performance team? Back then, it was the head coach at the top, and then there was sports medicine and strength and conditioning. It was a triangle, very simple. Today, that's not even close. So, I guess the question that I have to you is, what are some of the issues that you see in the strength and conditioning profession that your listeners bring out, and especially as to what is a strength coach now and what are their duties? And, I always look at it as preparation and readiness. This coach, the head coach, the big dog, whose wins and losses are the most important thing, he looks at preparation, X's and O's. But the readiness is the strength and conditioning coach. Now, he has all these different aspects of readiness, which is, recovery, nutrition, all of these other things that complicate the job or the role of the original strength coach, because they got to be ready to play. And, going back to everybody, I'm sure your listeners all know the concept of periodization. And so basically you have to, how shall we say this, bring all of these sources together and to be the most, to be on the same page with the head coach. That's the most important thing. Medical staff, yeah, they're great, but what is a medical staff? Somebody got hurt. Well, then, okay, here's the medical staff. See what I'm saying? I'm being a little prejudiced here, but medical, orthopedic surgeons operate. Athletic trainers are the first on scene to administer first aid or whatever the case may be. So, you have all of these parties now in the development of the athlete, and I just feel it's getting pretty complex. I don't know, what's your thoughts?
Oh, no, I agree with you. I think the biggest thing, just from my perspective, is that I think that as a strength coach in general, that our duties have to be defined better. I feel like there's still kind of, the jury is kind of out on what we're supposed to do. Some people think we teach speed. Some people think we stretch. Some people think we just do weightlifting and we don't even know the rules of the sport we're coaching. And I think the biggest thing is, like you talked about, I think you did a great job bringing that out. The coach is going to coach and we prepare them. And then if there's a problem with preparation, then that's on us. And if there's something going on with the sports skill that impedes what we're trying to do to prepare and prevent injury, then I think that's where we need to be. But I feel like if we were to identify 100%, right? If you're a football coach, you coach football, X's and O's, you do this. Your receiver coach coaches the receivers. He doesn't go and coach special teams or whatever. So I think for us, it would be a clear and concise thing of the strength coach is responsible for the preparation. The strength coach is responsible for the weight room stuff. The strength coach is responsible for when they come out of an injury. The second they're ready to go, we're involved in that. And everything works as a big circle. And I think that would be the biggest thing is if we are able to identify what we are. Plus, as we talked about before, Ken, other interviews, people, strength conditioning too, I think we lose a little bit because you do have brilliant strength coaches and people with masters and bachelors that truly love this. And then you have people that just did this because there's really nothing else to do.
Wow.
And I think that bothers us a little bit. I always use the example. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Draft with Kevin Costner.
I have not. Sorry.
Well, he's in charge of the Browns, but the part of the movie that always kills me is he goes into the weight room and the strength coach is there and he's this big guy yelling and screaming. And he's like, guess who benched 250 pounds today? Brian Drew, who's the fictional quarterback. Guess who squatted 400 pounds? Brian Drew. And I'm like, oh, good. We get our 10 seconds of fame and it's this guy yelling about barbells and numbers. So, I think that's it.
I think it's important, everybody out there, to your listeners, is to understand the definition of conditioning. And I have a specific definition I think that is important for strength coaches to follow. And basically, it's very simple. Plan, measure, progressive overload based on the rules of the sport. That's it. And planning goes back to talking to that head coach. That is the most important thing. That's the planned aspect of the definition of conditioning. You have to be on the same page. Practices, what type of practices do you have? What's the schedule like? What are some, and then also what's the most important thing is, what is your training or what is your philosophy as far as the sport is concerned? Soccer is a great example. They have very different aspects of physicality in soccer based on what the beliefs are of that particular head coach. So, and then it's a progressive overload, and well, measured is the second part, and that's tested measurements. You don't know if you're doing good as a strength coach unless your players are getting better, jumping higher, running faster, blah, blah. It's simple. So that shows you that the program is working, but more importantly, shows the athletes and shows the head coach that, hey, this is working. And then progressive overload is probably the most complex because it's the periodization. Periodization, a lot of people think of as linear, well, tomorrow we're going to do one more step, one more rep, one more, but you have to take breaks and periodize. And this is where the recovery aspect comes into it, nutritionally, et cetera. And then the rules of the sport are the metabolics. I mean, synchronous swimming is much different than American football as far as the metabolics that are important as far as the conditioning process. So I think a lot of people should just keep that in mind when they approach the whole conditioning process. That's just my opinion.
No, I think, you bring up a good point, and I think that's it. The definitions of what we do are skewed. You have strength and conditioning, and I have a very good friend, Richard, on my first podcast. He always talks about how it's conditioning and then the rest of the stuff, because without the conditioning, we're wasting our time. I mean, if you're not conditioned to do the sport or to participate in the sport that we're, getting you ready for, then, we failed. If you can power clean 500 pounds, but you can't go full goal for 10 seconds after the ball snapped, or you can't run down first base at your max velocity, we've made a big problem because, your strength is up and your weight stuff. So I think, just talking about what we talked about before, it's a clear and concise definition of what we're supposed to do. Our job is to get them better at the field because your constant variable is the sport. Like you just said, the sport doesn't change. So we have to abide by that. But
That's
I think
exactly right. That's it. The rules of the sport, and that encompasses everything. Mm-hmm. So, what your substitution allowability is, and et cetera. It goes on and on.
But I think the roadmap is right there. It's a sport. Oh, they need to – there's 35 seconds in between each snap. An average snap lasts 10 seconds. So now we do work for 10 seconds and rest for 35 seconds. We do that for four sets or 8 sets, and then you can roll that over, but that remains your constant. And I think everybody either tries to, reinvent the wheel, or people expect us to do, the guys need to lift heavy. And then you're like, but they don't need to do that in the sport. So that's not my job.
That's the sport. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then going back to your analogy, the hurry up offense, that changes the conditioning aspect too. If you're just going every play, boom, 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 and that was popular. It's not so popular anymore, but hurry up offense, this type of thing. So
it's because there's no conditioning anymore. The guys are tired.
That's right. Exactly. It's dead. Anyway. Okay.
What do you feel like is the biggest change that has happened with the NSCA from your time in the 80s to now?
Well, basically it's research-based. I think the research, bridging the gap in the research aspect of it, and then they added on military and they added on law enforcement as far as the association is concerned. So, it has really broadened from the initial sports, initially with football, and has gone into these other aspects in the journal. The military aspect of it, and of course the foundation, the cornerstone is still the CSCS exam, which is the strength and conditioning. And I was on the initial committee that put that exam together with Bill Kramer and Tom Beckley and Steve Fleck, all these people, and that really was the cornerstone as far as the gaining the credibility of people recognizing it's not a licensure. Trainers are licensed, but strength coaches at least are certified, and that certification is recognized by the right governing bodies, et cetera, so that people have an assurance that if a person is a CSCS, they have certain credentials and abilities and knowledge levels within that. So anyway, that's big.
Yeah, no, I think that is important. And, I think the test, should be administered. I mean, personally, I think they should change some stuff around with some of the questions and things like that. But I do think that, it is a good, it keeps us, constantly getting better, and just to make sure that we're kind of on the same page with that, though.
Yeah, well, that, it goes back to the science behind it and whatnot. The big controversy is exercise techniques and the practical. that's where things get a little dicey. And it always is. I mean, you keep your abs tight during the squat exercise? Do you avoid having your chest out when you're doing the squat exercise? And are you rounding your back? It goes on and on and on and on. And so there really is not a good consensus of really how to do the squat. I mean, going back to powerlifting, see a lot of variations, acceleration, Fred Hatfield and all of his accelerated squats and et cetera. So, techniques are really the whole. And then the other thing is that you need to be in the weight room a lot, gaining the practical experience. That is the most important thing as far as the practical is concerned, because then you learn from your mentor and the others. And so that's really an important, huge aspect of the certification.
Yeah, the experience is the most important thing.
It is.
I completely agree with you there. I mean,
absolutely.
You can't learn from reading out of a book, and you can't. No. And unless you're there, you really can't make changes. And I feel like the best coaches are the ones that have seen the same thing over and over and over again, and they can. Okay, let's fix this. Let's do this. A friend of mine always, you see the quote all the time. I didn't do this in 30 seconds. It took me 12 years of learning. And I think that's another misconception sometimes if coaches or people go in a weight room and you have a very good strength coach, very collected, and they know exactly what they want and they know their players, they're not screaming and there's not craziness because they have a clear and concise plan. Mm-hmm. Their players respect what they're saying. And also they know they know how to carry out what they want. So on the outside, it doesn't look like a fire drill, mm-hmm. but in reality, if you understood what was going on, you would see they know everything because they've done this so many times. And I think, the way to fix squats, and you just talked before, the technique is the most important, but I think the technique can be so varied because it's all about, again, the goal. What's the goal? If I'm trying to get more, just let's say, if I'm trying to get more, dorsiflexion or, plantar flexion on your ankle. Maybe you do a squat with light weights where you push the knee over the toe. Just maybe you got some scar tissue in the Achilles. So those are different things where, you can't say, oh my God, it can't go over the toe. Your knee can't go over the toe or, your back's rounded. Well, the Chinese, they squatted with a rounded back in the day,
that's right.
Stuff. So, Louis Simmons talks about that all the time. So I think that's the biggest thing. What's your goal? And I think, before people judge anything, what they're doing, you have to go talk to the person, talk to the coach, and again, ask them why and find out what their clear and concise goal is. And I think as strength coaches, we would be in a lot better spot, especially with social media and everything else, if we would just ask questions more and try to understand what everybody's doing instead of that's wrong, he's brutal, this is, and results.
The strength coach is the person that should relate to the athlete the most. Because they're in the weight room every day. They're on the practice field every day, this type of thing. And, one of the things as far as I learned from the Major League Baseball is that the strength coach, first thing is, how do you feel? How do you feel? And that is huge. And and 9 times out of 10, fine. But what you do is you listen to how they say fine and the inflections, and then you basically start a conversation by the word fine. So then you get to know your athletes. Then you know more about recovery than analytics, et cetera, because you can really get a feeling for sleep patterns and the things that are bothering them mentally, et cetera, et cetera. So that's very important. I'm not trying to downplay analytics. It's a good part of it, but it's a reinforcement. But if you just say how you feel today, there you go. You're on your way.
Yeah, that is highly important, and I do it all the time. I mean, when you get a new team, they all get mad at me. Why do you ask me how I feel? I'm like, I'm going to ask you to you, but you have to identify, where they are at the time and how they feel. And eventually the 35 fines in a row will turn into, okay, hey, look, here's what's going on.
That's right.
It's the fact that they know you care, and regardless if it seems annoying at points, it is important, and that's the most important thing. You become like, for me, when I was in the minor leagues, like their uncle. They're going to come to you. They're going to tell you their issues. You're going to have to dig deep, and if you can get them to do that for you, then you'll be good. But I think that is the biggest part that's kind of it's not glorified. The weights and the dumbbells, honestly, to me, don't matter if the relationship is there and we have a clear and concise goal and we agree on it. Exercise selection, we all use the same thing.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's great. I mean, that's write a book on that. And I'm sure you got things that have been said to you that say, I don't want this in the book, type of thing. So there's always that judgment call that you have to make in respect. But, you do start to really know that athlete. And that was when we went with the NSCA, we went to the Soviet Union, East Germany. And that's one of the things that we really learned was the relationship of the coach and the athlete and how well they knew each other. And to me, the biggest success of East Germany was the fact that their transition from level to level as far as the development of the athlete, the coach before and then the coach taking on that athlete had incredible communications. I mean, they talked and talked. What are the things about this athlete? What are the things that we can work on, et cetera? So in East Germany, back then, they were able to do that and do it effectively. So anyway, that's just a little side note.
Communication is the biggest thing,
Yep.
and I think it's something that we still struggle with today. Because 9 times out of 10, if you have a lot of injuries or something's going on with the team, there is a breakdown somewhere in between the coach
Yep.
and the AT and everything. And
Well,
I think
that's it.
you have to continuously talk about it, because if you have that communication, when you go to those bigger schools, that's there. It's a mandated thing when they get there. It's the culture. The AT talks to the strength coach talks to the coach, and everybody kind of follows along.
Right.
So for you, what do you hope will happen with the NSCA? If you could see it like growing in what direction, what do you feel like you'd like to see?
Well, I think, they're on a good track right now. But again, the problem right now is they had to cancel their convention in July and, that type of thing. So I think just continuing on, I'd like to see them get more sports specific with the conditioning process. That's really 25 years ago when I started performance conditioning. That was really the gist of it, saying that conditioning needs to be sports specific because that takes in the technical, tactical aspect importantly, and that you don't separate, and goes back to preparation and readiness. You don't separate the two, and that the preparation process influences readiness, because it's hey, we just had a kick-ass, can you say that on this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Well,
okay.
you're good.
Yeah, that's it. So anyway, you have that where you want to make sure that you have the right communication, and I call it, you hear about bridging the gap between the sports scientist and the researcher. I call it crossing the bridge, or being on the same bridge where the strength coach and the head coach are on the bridge together, working together to enhance performance. And then the other externals, as far as the athletic trainer and the sports medicine and all of the other massage therapists, all the other things, work in concert with that readiness and that preparation aspect of it, and are their resources, which they're the experts in. So anyway, those are just some thoughts.
Yeah, I think that is a good change, and I think that's where all the current organizations and the governing bodies, I think that's where they all have to change or continue growing, with the exercise selection and with the preparation and with the things that they claim that everybody needs. I think it has to continuously grow.
Yeah.
And as the science gets better and better, I think, we talk about analytics, and I'm a big fan of them too, but sometimes it overlaps and it causes too much stuff going on. I mean, you see with Major League Baseball all the time.
It's management. The information's golden, but it's the management and the application. And one of the things that, we, again, learned from the Soviets in East Germany is that basically training was individualized. Tremendous. Everybody was an individual. And so you had to apply different techniques and different exposures as far as training is concerned, because that individual would respond differently from another individual. And then it goes back to communication, knowing the athletes, et cetera. But it comes back to individuality of every person. Now, we've, with performance conditioning, we've developed a 7T system of program design. And that's basically to avoid cookie cutter programming. So in other words, here's the University of Nebraska offensive line strength program. All right, there it is. Okay, great. But what we do is every program is unique unto itself. We call it fit to a T. That's an old engineering term, you know, but you fit something that is specific that can work for you in your particular situation. And the 7 T's, I don't know if I can go into this just briefly. T1 is training age. So, you know, you're going to handle a 7-year-old the same way as a 14-year-old, as a 22-year-old. So training age, maturation, all of this is very, very important when you're considering designing a program. T2 is time. How much time do you have? What time is it? How much time during the week? Are we in the off season? So all of these things, and how much time do you have practice? And time is freaking everybody out because they don't have enough of it. They don't have enough to train. So the conditioning coach has to come in and see what the practice schedule is, and then fit in the time to do the strength and conditioning to supplement and augment what the preparation of the head coach is. T3 are tools. I mean, you know, you go in and we're going to do bench presses today. Well, you don't have a bench press. No, okay. Well, you have to know what tools you have access to. T4 is basically testing. And testing. T5 is testing. Let's see here. T4, golly sakes, I'm just drawing a blank here. But that's the total workload is T6, and T7 is program design, but T6 is teaching. You've got to be able to teach that exercise. So if you have a program and whatnot, and you don't, you can't teach it, you can't do that exercise, even though you have the tools and even though you have the time and it's appropriate for this specific age. And then T5 is testing. We talked about that a little bit, the importance of evaluating your program. And then T6, total workload, that goes into the whole periodization concept and training and management. And then T7 is the position specific. So you have a keeper in soccer, his training is much different, or her training is much different than you would have for a midfielder, which is a lot more endurance oriented as far as, and then the keeper is explosive. So anyway, those are the T7s, but I encourage, and that's what we do as far as it's the team position. Basically, keepers are different from midfielders in soccer, so there's some considerations there. That's your T7.
Yeah, well, I think it's very important, to have those things that you follow, and going back to what we talked about at the beginning is individuality. I think that the test, and we brought up the test before, I think that when you take the test and when you take all these things, they don't account into that. It's all about trying to identify the one movement or the one sport or thing that they do, and then we're all trying to find the cookie cutter so that everybody can do it. I mean, talk about analytics. Okay, you have Aaron Judge. It's, he's got 110 exit velo and his launch angle is 150.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
If he does this one thing, then we're all going to do that. And I'm like, well, he hits it 108 miles an hour because he's 6'7", and his launch, that's just how he swings. You can't take anybody and have them swing up in the air. It doesn't work that way. And I think that is one of the things that it's almost like, I feel like we go forward and then we come backwards, because, we at a point where, you just had the test, right? There was no data, not really, and you're just kind of spitting out strength coaches. Now we have data. So, in order for you to be a good strength coach, you have to have your players, like you said before, perform on the field. So now anymore, it doesn't matter how many people pass the test. Now you have to kind of separate yourself. And now we have data to do that. So that's gotten better. But now you have things where now that we have all this data, it's okay, they're at 80% today and this guy's at 60. Well, we need to do all this stuff now to maintain testosterone. And now you're killing these kids because you're like, oh, well, we have to monitor time. But it's more like the more data we have, we don't use it the right way. Instead of saying this guy deadlifted X amount of weight for this many reps in July of last year and his power output was great, it's let's test him every day and do all this stuff. Instead of using the analytics too much. I think they use it a little less and just relate it to the things that are important and then just let the game be
the analytics. The most important thing, and I go back to these Germans, is that you need to continue to collect data on that individual more and more. So if you have 2, 3, 4 years of data on that individual, there's nothing better because of the fact that you have that, but you just do it, one season or compare it to somebody else, which throws out the concept of individuality. that type of thing, or the principle of individuality. I mean, it's just becomes very time consuming, and as far as managing the data is important. So, a lot of people just say, hey, I just do perceived exertion. Was that on a scale of 1 to 10? What was that like? Well, that was a 6. And then, but the thing is, you understand, if you do it enough, you understand what that 6 means because of that individual. For me, a 6 is like, oh, but, I'd rather do a 1. But, that type of thing as far as the perceived exertion is concerned. So that's how you really learn the athlete, is how hard they felt, or how fatigued they felt after a particular activity, by just a simple scale number.
Yeah, and I think the data is pretty much, we need the data, but I think it's applying the data, and using it. Exactly. And the individual need to figure out a certain thing. We just don't have, I feel like we're at a space right now where we just collect data for everything all the time. We have numbers on their cleat sizes and all this stuff, and how tight their helmet is and their 40 time. And these things don't matter. He ran a 40 this day because he was this way, he got this much sleep, he did this, and he this much, there it is. Okay. And 2 years from now, well, he's gotten slower. Well, that's because this number went down and this didn't happen. If we go back and look, last whatever, he was at these numbers, this was his week, or this is what he did. Yeah. Instead of, oh my God, launch angle, it doesn't matter. The guys are going to hit balls over the fence no matter how they, what they do, and the pitchers are going to throw 100 no matter what they do, because genetically they're just supposed to be there.
And data, just, your 40-yard dash and your vertical jump, these, physical tests are important when injury occurs. So you get hurt, all right, you can blow out a shoulder, whatever the case may be, or whatever. And, let's just say you blow a knee and you have a vertical jump of so many inches, and you retest after the rehabilitation process and you're not there. As an athlete, you don't feel very good because of the fact that I am below what I was before I got hurt. So therefore, it's up to the strength coach really to make sure in the reconditioning process to make sure that not only is the injury healed, but it's integrated totally back to the rest of the body, and that you actually improve. Now, the goal is to increase that vertical jump after the injury has been rehabilitated and reconditioned.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing coming at injury. They have to should shoot to be stronger than they are. So what is on the horizon for you? What's next?
Well, we're doing our 20th anniversary issue of baseball, Performance Conditioning Baseball, continuing on with the newsletters with cycling, and anybody who is interested, www.performancecondition.com, and you can take a look and get a free issue and see what the different newsletters and the things that we provide. It's just going to be a continuation of that. I talk to NSCA from time to time, and work with United Soccer coaches and the Volleyball Coaches Association, VCAP, and working with the different organizations as far as do they want to develop some type of an accreditation, that type of thing. Which that's a major undertaking because you have to do a role delineation, so it's a big process. So anyway, I'm there to help, that type of thing. But continue on.
Yeah, so anybody out there listening, just go onto his webpage there, and there's a contact there, and he's always willing to help and answer any question anybody has.
Contact me personally. It's conpress@aol.com. COND like conditioning, press like the bench press. Conpress@aol.com. Shoot me a question or whatever the case may be. I'll send you something.
Okay, that's great.
All right.
For listening.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ken. I truly appreciate it. It was a lot of fun, and it was a pleasure to have you on the show.
It was fun. Thanks. You take care, Joe. And I'll be talking to you next week, brother.
All right. That sounds good. Hold on.
All right.